to conduct an investigation by the FBI to get to whatever you believe is the bottom of the allegations that have been levied against you?
The FBI would gather witness statements. You have
Sir,
the witness statements.
I don't want to debate with you how they do their business. I'm just asking, are you willing to ask the White House to conduct such an investigation? Because as you are aware, the FBI did conduct a background investigation into you before we were aware of these most recent allegations. So are you willing to ask the White House to do that? And say yes or no, and then we can move on.
We've had 6 background investigations over 26 years.
Sir, as it relates to the recent allegations, are you willing to have them do it?
The witness testimony is before you. No witness who was there supports that I was there.
Okay, I'm going to take that as a no, and we can move on. I only have a few seconds left, and I'll just ask you a direct question. Did you watch Dr. Ford's testimony?
I did not. I planned to. I planned to, but I did not. I was preparing mine.
California Senator and 2020 Democratic presidential candidate Kamala Harris during Brett Kavanaugh's confirmation hearings. This was Senator Harris this weekend in light of new reporting about the sexual assault allegations against Justice Kavanaugh. Quote, "I sat through those hearings. Brett Kavanaugh lied to the U.S. Senate and most importantly to the American people. He was put on the court through a sham process. And his place on the court is an insult to the pursuit of truth and justice. He must be impeached." Joining us now here in studio for the interview is Senator Kamala Harris, Democrat from California, 2020 presidential candidate. Senator, it's nice to see you. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you, Rachel.
A sham process. You're saying that he lied to the committee. What do you mean specifically?
Well, as you mentioned, I was a part of that hearing, and a sham process that we were not given all of the information that was available. At the 11th hour, literally the night before the hearing was to begin, thousands of pages were dumped on us. We knew, and certainly I knew, that that there were credible allegations that should have been investigated that were not. There was a process by which Christine Blasey Ford, who literally had nothing to gain by coming forward, Rachel, nothing to gain. She had a perfect life. And she looked at the fact that this guy was being nominated and said, the American people have a right to know what I know. And she was treated like a criminal. And now the guy is sitting on the court, and yet again, more allegations. Part of my inquiry during that process, and if you can believe it, it was a year ago, this month, was to ask even Christopher Wray, because I serve not only on Judiciary, I serve on Senate Intelligence Committee and Homeland Security. And so Christopher Wray came before the Homeland Security Committee. And when he was there, I asked him, who made the decision about the scope of that FBI investigation after we learned about Dr. Ford? The White House did. So the invisible, not so invisible hand of the White House was basically orchestrating, choreographing, curating what the Judiciary Committee would learn about this nominee to serve for a lifetime on the highest court in our land, a court that is supposed to do the work of justice, a court where inscribed in the marble that houses it, we say equal justice under law. It was a sham. And when we talk about expecting that people will have a sense of respect for the system of justice, we have to recognize that the process by which he was confirmed has created a crisis of confidence in that court. And, and so, yes, I've called for impeachment. I believe that is the clearest way for us to get an investigation of these allegations. And we should open an investigation of these allegations. And I know some have said, well, it's probably going to go nowhere because it'll come over to the Senate if the House returns articles of impeachment, and then it'll go nowhere in the Senate, because we've seen the majority in the Senate, frankly, coddle the misbehavior of this president. But my perspective is that that may be the end result for political purposes. That may be engineered as the result. But the American people and our system of justice, I believe, deserve that there will be a meaningful investigation into these allegations. They should have happened before he was confirmed. It didn't, but it is within the power of the United States Congress to do it now.
You think that an inquiry, which of course would have to start in House Judiciary, and hearings and investigation into this matter, airing out these accusations, even if Mitch McConnell would say in advance, which I'm sure he would, we're never going to take this up in the Senate.
Right.
Knock yourselves out, Democrats. This will help us politically. This is just sour grapes. We're never going to take a vote on it. You think that the inquiry itself and airing out these allegations, getting to the truth of it, is worth it no matter the political cost, if there is a political cost?
Yes, and I'll tell you why, Rachel. We're talking about a system of justice. And in a real system of justice, meaning a system that has integrity, allegations such as these, multiple allegations, should be pursued. And then do the investigation, go where the facts lead us. If there's nothing there, that's fine. But these are serious allegations that have repeatedly been raised. There are at least 25 witnesses in one case. This has to be something where we all agree that if we're going to have integrity in the system, we have to pursue justice. And, you know, so listen, let me tell you what else I'm calling for. If the United States Congress doesn't act, well, then let's appoint an outside counsel. Let's appoint an outside counsel. Somebody who is neutral, who can review the evidence in this case, determine the credibility of the witnesses, and let us, as the American people, let Congress, the judiciary committees, have the information to determine if this person should rightly serve on our highest court for a lifetime.
In terms of how this is going to be dealt with going forward, it's clear Jackie Colmes is a great reporter at the LA Times, has a book coming out on Kavanaugh. We've got this new book that is yet to come out from these two New York Times reporters that led to the publication of these revelations today. It has been only a year since Kavanaugh's confirmation. I wonder if this is left to essentially journalists to get to the bottom of these stories, if this will be a feature of the tenure of Kavanaugh's time on the court. If a formal investigation, I don't know. I mean, it's hard for me to see any end to this. I don't think he would ever be removed from the court through the impeachment process. I don't think the Senate Republicans would ever allow that to happen. If the Democrats do take the Senate, it would be a narrow majority. You need a big supermajority for removal. It just seems to me that this will be the story of Brett Kavanaugh's time on the U.S. Supreme Court, no matter what happens from here on out. And it just feels incredibly damaging either way. I find myself just enervated by it, in terms of the impact on women in particular.
You're right. I mean, listen, after the initial hearings that happened a year ago, the number of women and men who approached me in, public places and cried about what this meant to them, because there is so much about this issue. And I as a prosecutor, personally prosecuted sexual assault cases and cases of this general nature. And one of the worst things that happens is that when we are not willing to believe the victim and take them seriously, investigate the case, determine and assess credibility. But let's take the allegation seriously. And it's a very serious allegation. So, I think that, what we have seen, frankly, is we've seen a suppression of evidence. If the bodies that are charged with actually investigating fail to do it and block it off or tailor it, I would argue that's suppression of evidence.
Senator Kamala Harris, obviously former prosecutor, former attorney general for the state of California, now a Democratic presidential candidate. Stay right there. I have more things to ask you.
Will do.
We'll be right back with Senator Harris right after
Will
this.
do.
Let's be honest.
Back with us is California Senator and 2020 presidential candidate Kamala Harris. Oh, people can only see what we're talking about in the commercials. I actually want to ask you about something in the news that broke over the weekend about Saudi Arabia and Iran. We've seen the attack on these Saudi oil production facilities. The U.S. government is asserting that it's Iran. There's no visibility into the evidence that they're suggesting behind that. What do you think the president's options are at this point, and do you trust what they are saying about what happened?
Well, I serve on the Senate Intelligence Committee, and I know we're going to be briefed, but short of having that information, listen, we have to look at this in the context of other behaviors by this president as it relates to Iran. He took unilateral action to withdraw us from the Iran nuclear deal. Some people liked it, some people didn't. Some people thought it should be stronger than it was, but it was very well negotiated, and people were complying with it. And he pulls us out of it based on unilateral action, frankly, from my perspective, born out of his fragile ego. And everything that we have seen happen since was predictable to one extent or another. Iran poses a real threat to the United States based on its nuclear capabilities. And the negotiation of the JCPOA and that Iran nuclear deal was a smart way to put a cap on that in terms of escalating the threat. And now we look, and then apparently he's tweeting out, you know, this bravado about, you know, lock and loaded. What does that mean? Okay, and also...
Well, it's an implicit military threat that
yes,
the U.S. is going to use. We're going to use U.S. force.
Yes, it is. And again, you know, listen, as far as I'm concerned, this president is motivated by his personal insecurities more than he is our national security. And so what we're looking at is, again, a threat that might be taken seriously. And I would dare to say that that threat was issued without serious consultation with our allies, with our military leaders, with our diplomatic leaders. What are our alternatives? Let's also be clear, if this president is thinking about putting us in a position where we're in a war with Iran, the consequences will be absolutely unacceptable and tragic in terms of the young men and women who are American soldiers who would be sent and deployed into something that was completely avoidable.
If you did believe, if you were president right now and you came to believe that Iran had carried out this act, and again, you know, we have the president's assertions, the government's assertions on these things, we haven't seen the evidence. But if you as president came to be convinced that Iran had shot these missiles into Saudi Arabia to screw up their oil output, would you approach that as if the United States had a responsibility to backstop Saudi Arabia militarily? And there's an assumption that we would, but would that be true in a Harris administration?
Well, in a Harris administration, we wouldn't have gotten ourselves into this mess in terms of we would have stayed as part of the partnership that was part of the Iran nuclear deal, and we would have kept our word, and we would have held up our end of the bargain. Also, let's step back and look at this president's relationship with the Saudis and the kingdom. Do you know that this president, during his tenure in the White House, has issued 5 vetoes total, 4 of them related to Saudi Arabia? When the United States Congress was taking action, for example, to say that we would not fuel their jets, this president vetoes it. The long stories about all of the people that stay at his hotels and his, you know, this and that. Look at Khashoggi. The American intelligence community has made it very clear about the Saudis' involvement in the assassination of a journalist who had American credentials. But Donald Trump prefers to take the word of a Saudi prince over the word of the American intelligence community on this issue. So we have to look at this in the totality of circumstances that have been presented to us to recognize that I do not believe that the current president of the United States is working in the best interest of the people of this country. I have good reason, based on everything we know publicly, to suspect and to be concerned that his motivation is more out of self-interest than it is the interest of the American people. And again, let's not forget that he cannot do this, nor should he be able to, without an authorization of use of military force by the United States Congress. There is that piece of it also. But the bottom line is that, you know, I'm traveling our country and meeting with the families who are sending their sons and daughters to these endless wars. And this president better take very seriously any threat that he makes to enter us into another war and send our young men and women into battle
We'll be right back with Senator Kamala Harris. Stay with us. When California Senator Kamala Harris announced her 2020 presidential campaign, she did so at an event in Oakland, California, not far from where I'm from, that had people as far as the eye could see. The largest campaign event held thus far by any 2020 presidential candidate, Kamala Harris's launch. There may have been an event tonight in New York City that matched it, though. Senator Elizabeth Warren downtown had what appears to have been an equally giant event. It feels like as the campaign goes forward, as these sort of tiers of candidates settle in, as we know who's making the debates and stuff, that the competition has really joined. Much more so than when I saw you the last time. How are you feeling about your campaign and where you're at?
I'm feeling good.
Tell me.
I'm feeling good. There is an incredible amount of enthusiasm. I mean, Rachel, we're going, obviously a lot is the primary states, New Hampshire, Iowa, South Carolina, Nevada. People are standing in line for hours. They're, you know, from in the winter, people standing in line in a snowstorm to 100+ degrees. During the summer, people who have never been engaged are getting out there and being involved. I've even had daughters who are bringing their Republican fathers. Right? I've seen people who are literally 100 years old who have seen everything and they're fed up and they're engaged. Children of every age. And, you know, listen, this is about a campaign that is about saying, look, one, we're better than this. So the obvious point is we need to defeat Donald Trump. And I fully intend to do it. As you know, the way I've been talking about is we need somebody on the debate stage in the general who can successfully prosecute the case against 4 more years of Donald Trump. And as far as I'm concerned, there's a nice long rap sheet on which to do it. And then it also, for my campaign and for me personally, is about the fact that we've got to unify the country. And we need somebody who has the ability to bring our country together around our common values, around our common hopes and dreams, around the commonality that is the thing that wakes us up in the middle of the night. Because when we all wake up thinking that thing in the middle of the night, it usually has to do with the same thing, regardless of what party we're registered to vote with, regardless of some simplistic demographics some pollster put us in. That's what I'm talking about. And I think that what we're seeing is that it's what people want to know, which is that you're strong enough to beat the guy who needs to get out, but that you also have the ability to see the commonalities between people who seemingly have nothing in common and bring us together around those issues. And that's the strength of our campaign.
Senator Kamala Harris, California 2020 presidential candidate. It's great to see you, Senator. Thank you for coming in.
Thank you. I appreciate you.
We'll be right back.
Thank
Stay
you.
with us.